The February 16th meeting of the Jacksonville Beach City Council will begin with the invocation delivered by Mr. Jansen, followed by the salute to the flag. Please rise.
Let us pray. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for your blessings and grace that you bestow upon us each and every day. Lord, we just ask you to be with us and open our minds to spirited conversation as we continue to build this great city on your firm foundation. Lord, we ask you to be with our first responders and our military as they fight to protect our freedoms each and every day. And Lord, we just thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, for it's in his name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Councilmember DeMont. Here. Goldie. Here. Jansen.
Here.
Mesa.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Stokes.
Here.
Mayor Hoffman.
Here. Item 021, please.
I move we approve the council briefing, minutes from the council briefing held January 25th, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 022, please.
I move we approve the minutes from the regular city council meeting held on February 1st, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Announcements from the council? Ms. Golding.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like for the audience and for the council to let everyone know that the Florida legislative session will be starting March 2nd, which is coming up soon. And there's two bills that are actually going to be going through the legislature that are very concerning for our beach community because they both impact our residential neighborhoods. One of them is regarding vacation rentals, and it would preempt our government from being able to regulate, license, and inspect vacation rentals. And then the other one is about home-based businesses, and it would also preempt us from licensing and regulating home-based businesses. I would encourage citizens to go to the Florida League of Cities website, which is floridaleagueofcities.com, register for their legislative alerts, and do whatever you can to contact our local elected officials, our legislative officials, and let them know how you feel about in particular, these two pieces of legislation that are going to be introduced beginning March 2nd. Thank you.
Any other announcements? I have one quick one. I was able to visit with the new Operations Center of Fairbanks Morse, which opened in our industrial area in central South Jacksonville Beach. And the reason it's pretty significant is even though it's a small shop, it provides service and repair to the engines of littoral combat ships, which is a big deal for Mayport here in the Navy. So I think it's probably one of the first of our kind in Jacksonville Beach, considering they normally cluster closer to the base or in places with larger bases. So it's exciting to see that come in, brought in a few pretty well-paying jobs, so I'm excited to see that come, and it's in that really nice new warehouse area down there off of 10th Street. So it was, hopefully we'll all get a chance to go out there and visit them sometime soon. Seeing no other announcements, we'll have courtesy of the Florida visitors. I have one card that is not attached to an agenda item. Diane Hayes. If you want to approach the podium and just give us your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. Sorry about when we're dressed. I'm Diane Hayes. I live at 49 Sandra Drive, and we moved to Jacksonville Beach for my daughters to attend the Ark of St. John's on Penman and 2nd. It's an adult day training center for adults with special needs. My husband works at a radio station right off of 202, and I work at Turner Ace in Marsh Landing. So it was very handy for us to move to Jacksonville Beach. But we moved to Sandra Drive, and we moved there partially because I can't do a lot with my daughters, but we can walk. And we thought, well, we can walk to stores, and we can walk to get their hair cut, we can walk to the beach. But Sandra Drive is a throughway, essentially. And when folks turn off of Osceola onto Sandra Drive, they're going at 60, 65 miles an hour. I downloaded an app to see how fast they're going. And it's now prohibitive for us to even stand in our front yard without fearing for our lives. So we'd like it to be considered to either close 23rd at Sandra and keep our neighborhood a residential neighborhood so that we could walk in the street and be residential people and not live on a throughway, or perhaps consider a stop sign on Osceola just to slow the traffic down a little bit so when they make the left. I felt like this since we moved in, but yesterday my girls were getting off their van in front of our home, and the van is marked the Ark of St. John's, and my daughter's, Molly's not as obvious, but Megan obviously has Down syndrome, and two people started cursing at us because they weren't moving fast enough off of their van in front of my home that was not parked. It was just idling. We were getting them off the van, and the folks were just coming from Whole Foods or so. And it's just not a great experience right now. So we'd like it to be considered that something be done to Sandra Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Okay, moving back to our agenda, item 023.
I move that we accept the financial report for the month of January 2021.
Second?
We have a motion and second. I'm sorry, I meant to go to staff for that. Staff, any comments?
Yes, this is the monthly financial reports that are required for submission by the city charter, and CFO Ashley Gossett is here if you have any questions.
I do not see any questions on the board. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Heather Devont? Yes. Golding? Yes. Jansen?
Yes.
Mesa?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes. Item 024, we have a staff report.
We do. Mayor and Council, this next item is seeking authorization to enter into a master services agreement and statement of work with Civic Plus for the redesign of the city's website. You've heard this discussed at some previous briefings and given us authorization to negotiate with Civic Plus. Here to talk a little bit more about the project is Jacob Board, our communications manager, and we also have a representative from Civic Plus here this evening.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is John Pugh. I'm with Civic Plus, so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I have a short PowerPoint on a little bit more information about Civic Plus I'll go through. We have been in business for over 20 years, 4,000 local governments, 120 plus just in Florida, 100,000 users, 250 million people impacted. At the core, what this slide is showing that Civic Plus is a website company, but we're much more than a website company. We're an engagement company. Civic Engage is what we call our website platform. That's going to be paired with Civic Clerk and Agendas and Minutes platform to give you guys a powerful solution here at Jacksonville Beach. We have some before and after pictures here of what we've done in the marketplace. This is a before picture. Afterwards, at Arroyo Grande. We did an internal page for their police department here. You guys have a couple of these included on your website. Any department can take advantage of this to make a more powerful internal page. Next slide is Neptune Beach, before and after. Atlantic Beach, just to the north, before and after. And Fernandina Beach, before and after. These are all customizable solutions. Halea, before picture and after. So I am happy to answer any questions the council would have.
All right, let's go ahead and get a motion on that, and we'll open it up for questions.
I move that we approve the master service agreement and statement of work with Civic Plus LLC for website design and development and public meeting management.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Does anybody on council have any questions or comments? Ms. Golding.
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed in the quote that there's a statement that the content migration for agendas and minutes says 100 meetings. So is that strictly, Because currently on our website, we have quite a bit of archived history there. A lot of our boards go back to 2005, city council documents go back to 2013. So is this just going to be 100, and if it's 100 meetings only, will we have the ability to?
Yeah, good question. You have civic clerk included, so that all your agendas and minutes will be taken care of. If you didn't have that agendas and minutes platform, we would pull up to 1 year, and then there's a button on there you can pull in 3, 5, archive some. So that separate platform for civic clerk, we'll get with you and we'll pull over how many you want to and give you some best practices on archiving some of those also. So.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. I'll follow up on what Councilmember Golden just asked. So with the civic clerk, you just said that you'd give us guidance on how to archive, so you would not be taking the minutes and making them all ADA accessible in PDF. That would fall back on us. So is that what you're saying? You provide the platform, and then we would have to make sure all of our 15 years of meetings and all of the boards, we would have to make them ADA compliant. You wouldn't be doing that.
There's an ADA portal to civic clerk, so we will make those ADA compliant.
The past meetings or just the future meetings?
Both.
Okay, so you'll go back to the 2005? 2005, and all those meetings, you guys will get the ADA compliant and archive them. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Stokes?
I just always like to know who your point of contact is. Is it going to be Jacob for arranging all of the meetings on our side and making sure everything gets done based on the timeline presented?
Yeah, good question. You'll have a project manager from Civic Plus assigned to your city, and Jacob will be the point of contact. These are about 6-month processes to go live, from signature to go live.
Is that all, Mr. Stokes?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine. Those before pictures did not look that bad compared to our before pictures. So I was like, Arroyo Grande, that looks pretty good. Thank you so much, Mr. Pugh. I don't see any other questions. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Jansen?
Yes.
Mesa?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Demott? Yes. Mayor Hoffman?
Yes. Item 025.
Mayor and Council, this next item is staff's attempt to resolve an outstanding business tax receipt issue related to a business that is no longer operating in the city of Jacks Beach. I'd like to turn it over to the city attorney for a short presentation on the item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I submitted this item to the Council for consideration of reduction of a delinquent local business tax receipt, fees and fines that have accumulated by Third Eye Tattoo Art Studio, which had been operating its business in our jurisdiction since October of 2018, but they've just recently closed their doors and have plan to move their business to the city of Jacksonville, I believe. The owners are locals, and I've had several meetings with them, but the background is that Third Eye is 2 years in arrears of the local business tax receipt, and they accumulated delinquent fines as a part of their failure to pay the LBTR. And the amounts are accounted for in our code of ordinances. So the owner representative of Third Eye, Ms. Joya, she acknowledged that pursuant to our code that the company does owe the LBTR and the delinquent fines, but has turned to us to try to work something out. And it was important to her that she make some effort to resolve it with the city rather than just having the amounts go unpaid. So this was our suggested approach to the council, that 2 years of the LBTR and the delinquent fines, total amount of $6,250. And city manager and I and the city clerk discussed this issue. And while the Third Eye owners expressed to me that they would have difficulty making the payment in full of that amount of $6,250, that they would potentially try to work out some long-term payment plan. But the manager and I discussed this and decided to propose to council to reduce the total by 50%. And the 50% would be required to be paid within 30 days of council's approval. I would draft up a very brief agreement that would require Third Eye to make payment in full no later than 30 days from council's approval, and that if Third Eye should fail to make the full payment by that deadline, then I would be authorized to go to the courts and require them to pay the full amount that they owe, and also in addition to attorney's fees and costs, which I'd be entitled to pursue and seek the judge to award us. So this is essentially, in a capsule, this is the situation that we have going on with Third Eye. And then a secondary issue is that I was going to suggest to council that they may want to consider, that council may want to consider providing the authority that's retained in the city code currently for a city council to take these actions, to perhaps authorize the city manager to take actions under any further circumstance that involves a local business tax receipt, such as this. But this is section 15-10 that provides the city council with the authority to make a change or alter or decrease or reject any local business tax at any time. So the council retains the authority in the code to authorize this reduction, and perhaps council might want to consider allowing the city manager to have some of that authority as well, and then we can handle it without having to come to the city council. But that's, in summary, that's what's going on here. So the request is essentially authorizing an agreement with Third Eye so that they would be required to make the payment in full of half of their total amount, so $3,125 to be paid in full to the city no later than 30 days from city council approval, and then authorize me to take any legal actions against them if necessary for their failure to pay.
Give a motion?
I move that we approve agreement with Third Eye Tattoo Art Studio LLC for reduced delinquent local business tax receipt fines and fees in the amount of $3,120 to be paid in full to the city clerk's office no later than 30 days from city council approval, and approve city attorney to take any legal action necessary to recover the tax and fines if Third Eye fails to make full payment as required by the agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Dumont.
Thank you. This is regarding changing 15-10. I would like to see at least a proposal put forth that would give the city manager authority to do this versus council, but with some kind of a breaking point. If the negotiation is like less than 50% or some kind of a dollar amount. But moving forward this way, we can look at that at a future briefing as well, council meeting.
Mr. Jansen.
Just as a matter of syntax, Councilman Nichols said 3,120. I think it should be, for the record, 3,125.
Thank you. We'll note that correction on the motion. Ms. Golding?
I have some concerns about establishing a precedent in doing this, because we have a lot of businesses that are paying their LBTRs like they're supposed to. And I did a little bit of research, and Third Eye actually filed with the state through Sunbiz articles of organization back on July of 2017, and the address for their business at that time was 2409 3rd Street South. And I checked with the city clerk, and we don't have an LBTR on file for the business from that location. They apparently moved in 2018, and then they got their LBTR. So I have some concerns because apparently the business had been operating in Jacks Beach prior to the move to the location at 3rd Avenue South, but there was no LBTR at that time. So I just wanted to make that information available to the city council.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Anybody else? My question on transferring the authority to the city manager, I can't ever remember dealing with one of these issues in my time on council. So is this a common, do we anticipate it becoming more common? Do you see something coming down the pipeline that businesses who are struggling to make these payments?
No, I don't anticipate it ever happening again, and this first for me as well, for any other local government I've worked with, and for me as city attorney for Jacksonville Beach, and that's why I kind of had to scratch my head a little bit and think things through and try to process how to handle this properly, and then confer with the city manager and city clerk, and put our heads together to figure out a solution to a very unique and rare occurrence. So no, Mayor, I don't see this happening very often, but if like Councilwoman Dumont said, that if, we should bring to council perhaps a threshold or a dollar value where below it, of course, the city manager would have authority, but anything higher than that, city council, we'd have to bring it back to city council. I mean, I don't foresee this happening again. Nothing that I'm aware of at this moment exists like this.
Golding, revisit?
Yeah, I apologize. Just a little more information I wanted to share. I did do some research, and on Facebook, I was able to confirm that they were in operation in Jacksonville Beach during those timeframes when they filed with the Division of Corporations, the state of Florida. So aside from just that paperwork that I found through Sunbiz, I was able to confirm that they were in operation at that time until they moved to the 3rd Avenue South location. So I am concerned that there was no LBTR during that time frame.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes.
You mentioned that they were locals. Are they Jacks Beach locals, Jacksonville locals?
They're Jacks Beach locals, and this is as presented by Ms. Joya, the wife, the husband and wife team, and the clerk's office and I had conferences with her, and we don't have any reason to doubt what she's telling us. But I didn't go searching a background of her or her husband, but they represented, their Fletcher kids, quote unquote Fletcher kids, and yeah, I'm not going to question their representation to us on that.
So then you also mentioned that they are moving their business to Jacksonville?
Right, and so that's another thing that they shared with us, is that they were going to open a business in Jacksonville. That's right, and I don't know many more details about that because I'm trying to stay away from any Jacksonville business types of circumstances, but concerned only with what our jurisdiction needs.
And
that's the information she provided us.
Last question at the time. If we were to want to obtain the full $6,250, what is the, I guess, I don't know if the likelihood of that, for a better word, considering that they're already that far behind and now moving their business to Jacksonville, where I guess they'll be having to pay a Jacksonville tax?
That's right. They'd be subject to the Jacksonville tax, and then, of course, any of the opening costs and operation costs for a new business in a new city. But that's their business operation management responsibility. In terms of what they owe the city of Jacksonville Beach, I think the likelihood of us receiving all of that amount of money at one time is very unlikely. I think that we would have to set up a payment plan, or our alternative is to enforce what they owe us judicially and filing a lawsuit to obtain the amount that's in arrears and the fines. So those are our two options, and I think Ms. Joy made it pretty clear that they're just unable to make that full payment of $6,000 plus to us at one time, and she asked for a payment plan if council would not approve this request tonight. So I would have to then come forward with some feasible payment plan, I suppose, that would be reasonable and acceptable to the council.
Okay, sorry, last question. On going back to what Councilmember Golding said about worrying about opening up a precedent, is that a concern here by taking this agreement?
It's not a concern of mine, again, because as I mentioned in the answer to the mayor, I don't foresee this type of event happening again. I don't have any knowledge of anything like this on the horizon. The clerk's office is quick to bring me on, loop me in on concerns they have with delinquent businesses, and they haven't advised me of anything that concerns them the way that Third Eye does and did. But also for precedent, the manager and I are pretty firm and strong, so we're not going to allow just this one rare incident to set a precedent for how the manager is going to handle other businesses who may end up being delinquent. So we're okay. We take it case by case.
Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. I understand Sandy's concerns, but it sounds like this is a good faith negotiation. For the amount that we're talking about here, I don't think we want to invest more money than we would get back from the back payments. So I'll end up supporting this.
Right, Ms. Dumont, that's exactly what we did, was we tried to weigh and balance all the pros and cons of playing this out completely through a judicial enforcement action, potentially a long-term payment plan, or potentially this solution that we proposed to council. And again, it was three or four choices for us to work with, and this was the one that we thought would come to the quickest resolution, but also perhaps the most financially best decision for the city as well. Trying to weigh and balance all of the options there.
Thank you, Mr. Ambrosio. I don't see any other lights. The motion was to approve the reduced amount of $3,125. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Demott, yes, Golding,
No.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes. Motion carries. 026, staff report.
Mayor and council, it's not uncommon that when private development occurs within the community, there are occasionally improvements that are made within the public domain, and those improvements are then transferred over to the city of Jacksonville Beach for long-term operation and maintenance responsibility. In this particular incident, the project that we're talking about is the Margarita Hotel, Margaritaville, where they have made improvements that are being turned over to the city of Jacks Beach in a value in excess of $200,000. One of the prominent improvements that they've made is actually the extension of the boardwalk to go in front of their hotel, which hopefully the pictures are up there for you to see. And I think there's one more. So at this time, we have all of the prerequisite documents in place to accept the dedication, and we're seeking your formal authority to do so, and the Director of Public Works, Dennis Barron, is here if you have any specific questions.
Can we get a motion?
I move that we accept the dedication of the city and acceptance for maintenance of the public infrastructure improvements for the Margaritaville Hotel.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions from council? Mr. Stokes.
Yeah, I just wanted to check on the bike lane if that's been reestablished. And I know that it's not necessarily the bike lane, but it's the extension of the full shared roadway. So just wanted to see if that's been reestablished.
I can't answer that yes or no that has that been reestablished, but I know we are in process of moving the signs to incorporate that as a shared bike lane there in front of Margaritaville. And one correction to the memo, just for clerical purposes, the memo says that we had received a bond, a warranty bond for the public infrastructure. Margaritaville actually requested to supply an irrevocable letter of credit for that 1 year, which, working with Mr. Ambrosio, was decided that that was an acceptable alternative. So I wanted to make you aware that that is an alternative of what's stated in the memo that we actually have. And I believe we have Taylor Hill with Kinley Horn Engineering, who is here. There is hiding in the corner. If you've got any other questions of Margaritaville or above and beyond what I can answer.
Mr. Stokes?
Yeah, are they going to be responsible for, I guess, striping the bike signal on the road like we have at the, on the south end and, for the bikes?
That lane has actually been narrowed down to where it will just be a shared roadway. It won't separate it even
Right,
further.
but in that shared roadway, there's a little bicycle symbol on the road.
I believe the symbol Mr. Stokes is talking about is one that Jack's Beach will be installing.
I know what
It's
you're
the-
talking about. It's
the
yeah,
shadow.
you got to share the lane with the bicycle.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were asking.
Yeah,
I was
sorry.
thinking you were
Like-
talking about white lines on the sides.
No, I meant like the symbol in the roadway.
Yeah, that is correct. We will be doing that.
Okay.
Mr. Nichols?
I had a question about 6th Avenue South. I've noticed, 6th Avenue North, that when it's busy and that area is full, you're getting cars going into 6th Avenue North, and the lot's full, and having a problem turning around, and we're coming up with a challenge in that area. Has that been looked at? Is there any potential solution for that other than having somebody say, hey, we're full?
That has been brought to us as one of the answers. That's kind of why we've tried to alter how we make them so that you can actually enter and exit two different directions. That particular entrance isn't wide enough to do that. We've looked at some potential alternatives, but they all affect parking, which would pretty much take the last two spaces closest to the boardwalk out of play for people to be able to pull in, back up, and then turn around and get back out. So right now, we don't want to try to take parking immediately if it becomes a problem. I know we have a problem on the Casarina side as well because the parking spaces are somewhat narrow and short because of the palm trees they have parked. So we're trying to figure out what we need to do next, whether that's to make those a little larger to allow a little more space in the middle for maneuvering, or do we need to do something completely different on the south side of that particular beach entrance, make it cart-only parking or something to accommodate the shorter vehicle length because those spots aren't really long enough. When you get a long bed pickup truck four-door in there, they're sticking all the way across. Matter of fact, I took a picture of my truck parked directly across from one last week. I don't know that you could have got a golf cart between the two trucks as they were parked. So I know it's an issue. We're trying to figure out what a solution is at the least impact at this point right now.
Mr. Mason?
Quick question. Right now that you brought up about the trucks, are we allowed to put up a sign that says no trucks allowed at park, or are we going?
I mean, I guess we would have to evaluate that. I mean, I don't know exactly how you would state it, no trucks. You're looking at particular truck size, or is it compact car only? I mean, at what point do you stop the line? Somebody that drives a Ford Ranger pickup truck won't have any problem parking in there, but somebody with a full-size dually four-door might have issues getting in and out of there. So I don't know exactly what we would want to do as far as that beach end to try to limit that. I think it's all what we're trying to look at as we see what kind of traffic they're going to get. We monitor it quite frequently because we know it's a new business and things are happening down there, so we're trying to really keep an eye on and addressing the situations. I know the first opening weekend they were actually pulling out and parking on the boardwalk, so we had to be quick to address that to stop that from happening because people were not understanding what they were doing.
Okay, thank you.
I agree that it's an issue. I drive a very compact car, and I had to do about a 37-point turn to get out of there. But I love the extension of the boardwalk, and I wish we could go further either way at this point. I think we're past the point of no return on that one, but I think they did a beautiful job with that. I don't see any other questions. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Meza,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Mott,
Yes.
Golding,
Yes?
Jansen,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes. Staff report on item 027.
Thank you, Mayor. This next item is looking to expend funds to do a Q's retrofit of an existing city truck. This is basically for the Public Works Department to be able to put cameras down into and televise what they see within all of our closed conduit systems, stormwater lines, sewer lines, structures, manholes, etc. The city has had an issue with the technology they're currently using, And Q's is the proprietary technology that we're using in order to televise and record. So we do have the Public Works Director here if you have any specific questions for him. But we are looking to effectively use money from our reserve funds in water sewer in order to do this camera upgrade.
Motion?
I move that we approve the purchase of a Q's retrofit for an existing city truck, compact Hype Ranger, OZ3 mainline camera, and declare Q's as the sole source vendor.
Second?
You've had a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Golding?
I do have a question. Since the funding is going to come out of the Water and Sewer Fund Operating Reserve, do we know what we will have left in the operating reserve once that is taken out?
Hi, I'm Ashley Bassett, CFO. So to answer Ms. Golden's question, should this project be approved, there'd be an additional $4.6 million in the water sewer reserve. And we arrived at that money, that dollar, taking the beginning fund balance, this year's commitments in the budget and roll forwards, and then ensuring that we have a 3 to 6 month operating reserve on hand always.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't see any other questions on the queue. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Lamont? Yes. Golding?
Yes?
Jansen?
Yes.
Beza?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Staff report on 03.
The City of Jacksonville Beach is entitled to receive community development block grant funds, which are made available from the federal government. But based on our size, we actually do a distribution through the City of Jacksonville, which means each year we are required to submit an application to the City of Jacksonville for receipt of CDBG funds. This year, as in previous years, we are seeking to receive funds to apply directly to the Carver Center Recreation and Community Center, and also for the community-associated policing effort, the CAPE program downtown. We do have our Parks and Recreation Director, Jason Fatidis, here, if you have any questions with regards to the application.
Thank you. Motion, please.
I move that we authorize the mayor and city manager to submit a CDBG application for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 for the Carver Center Recreation and CAPE program.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Ms. Golding?
Mr. Patidis, I asked this question via email, but I apologize. I really did not understand your answer, so if you could hear me, please. I was looking at I guess it was the CAPE program application, and it says that the matching funds, it puts in quotes 50% minimum, and so when I look at the application, it doesn't look like the matching funds are 50%, so could you help me understand how that's supposed to work?
I'll do my best. Jason Patidis, Director of Parks and Recreation. So the matching funds are made up of any part-time staff as well as operating expenses. And as you can see on the CAPE program, came to about $26,000, which is not 50% of the funds requested. But that's a minimum, as I understand it, to score the highest score when they are grading the grant. So you may not make the score on that particular item, but there are other items that will make up so that we can receive at least partial funding for our request.
Okay, and have we done this before in the past? I guess our requests have been similar to this, and we've not had any issues with it.
Yes, the request is consistent with what we've been doing for the past 6 to 8 years at least.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Salfopoulos, you said downtown Cape, but there's specifically an officer assigned to this area that's served by the Carver Center, right?
Yes, this is for, I'll let Mr. Fatidis explain.
Yes, Mayor, this is specifically for the Carver and the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you. Any other questions from Mr. Fatidis? Just got a speaker card on this item. If you guys will indulge, I'll call up Justin Patak. You have 3 minutes, if you could state your name and address. We're breaking a little bit of protocol here to allow you the opportunity to speak, so.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. This is Justin Patak, 404 8th Street South, Jacksonville Beach. So I live right across the street from the Carver Center, so I was actually coming here before I even knew this was on the agenda. It's been quite dormant lately, and I know of some very qualified adult teachers with credentials who would be more than willing to be over there during the afternoons and evenings for a wide variety of art classes, history classes, political science, education of all variety, especially during this pandemic when there's a lot more homeschooling going on and extracurricular activities are in the need. So if any of you want to talk further, Justin Patak, JustPatakHC.com, JustPatak@gmail.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Patak. We have a motion, a second, and looks like discussion is cleared. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Mott?
Yes.
Golding? Yes. Jansen?
Yes.
Mesa?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Staff update on the resolution, item 029.
This next item is a resolution to amend policies for beaches energy services, specifically the policy for the installation of underground electric distribution and service facilities. The policy that the city had in place dates back to 1985 and was based on fixed prices and therefore were not reflective of what we currently do today. Beaches Energy has effectively upgraded their policies to be more relevant with what we do today, and the process will now be to seek reimbursement of the actual cost for the installation of those underground facilities. We do have Don Cuevas here, our engineering supervisor, in the event that you have any questions related to this item.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you read the resolution by title?
A resolution of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, to amend its policy for the installation of underground electric distribution and service facilities, providing for adoption of the policy, adoption of recitals, repeal of prior inconsistent resolutions, severability, and an effective date.
Motion, Mr. Nichols?
I move that we adopt resolution number 2071-2020, amending the policy for the installation of underground electric distribution and service facilities.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. I just noticed that the resolutions have a different number on my agenda. It says 2021, and on the council item it says 2020. Is that just me? Okay, it's just me. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item? Ms. Golding?
Do we, I know we probably don't know, but the memo had said that the cost was a flat fee. Do we have any idea, as far as residential goes, will that fee be, do we think it's going to be higher than what the flat fee was, or do you have any idea?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Don Cuevas. I'm the electrical engineering supervisor for Beaches Energy Services. So yes, because of the time that lapsed and the prices of materials and labor now, the new cost for residential extensions for underground subdivision would go up.
Okay. I guess my only concern would be that would not encourage residents to do that, but it's for new development though, correct?
For new development.
Okay. And just some information that will provide a little bit of humor. I actually got a copy of the old policies, and I'm glad to see that we no longer have the trailer part of the policy in there anymore, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Thank you for that recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Cuevas. Anybody have any other questions? Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Demond?
Yes.
Golding? Yes. Jansen?
Yes.
Mesa?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. The next item, staff want to provide an update on this one?
Yes, ma'am. The city council was going to hear the rewrite of the animal ordinance prior to the beginning of the new calendar year. That item was delayed until we were able to come to briefing on January 25th. and go through the ordinance in more detail with council. Since that time, staff, in working with the city attorney, has made amendments to that document and provided you with a new first reading consideration for the animal ordinance. We do have representatives from Animal Control, the Police Department, and the City Attorney's Office all here to answer questions you may have. Additionally, I believe there were some documents that were sent to you late this afternoon, which included a full strike-through and underline of the document, as well as some continued concerns by Ms. Golden, which she may be bringing up tonight for consideration. And with that, I turn it over to any questions that council may have, and we'll have the appropriate people come up and answer questions as necessary.
Let's hold off on questions until we're through the public hearing, if you don't mind. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, to repeal and replace Chapter 5, Animals and Fowl, in its entirety, including a new title, articles, and sections, providing for legislative findings, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you. This ordinance is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2020-8155. Do we have anyone who would like to speak in favor of the ordinance? Do we have anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the ordinance? Public hearing is closed. May I get a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2020-8155 on the first reading, repealing and replacing the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 5, and schedule a second reading for March 1st, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and just for the audience and anyone watching at home, just so you're aware, we have had extensive conversations on this, including probably an hour or so at a briefing. So I think we have a lot of discussion to have tonight, but this is a big change to our ordinance, so I don't want you to feel like we're giving it short shrift if our discussion is shorter than you might expect tonight. I'll open the floor for any questions from council. Mr. Stokes.
I have some serious qualms with voting on this tonight. That even just up until 2 o'clock today, we had gotten more information. We've gotten more comments, things that should need I feel like that we should discuss, especially when we talk about. It looks like the animal shelter. Seems like there's a lot that we just got today that still hasn't been fully decided upon. So I feel like we need to take a moment and get this finalized before we fully adopt it on first reading.
Mr. Mesa?
Question for the police department. Question for the police department. When we have responsible dog owners and we have dog owners who are not responsible at all whatsoever, which I have witnessed dog owners not being good dog owners on the beach. How has it been after the beach was open on COVID with the dog owners not listening when you approach them, or when you approach the dog owner not following directions? What has been the feedback on it? Have you had any pushback at all? Was it just any citations and people get mad, or what is it like out there? I've heard multiple things where people agree to it, they're not nice about it, and there's some that are just up in arms and upset about it, but they're in the wrong. How's it been?
Hello, I am Sergeant Tanya Taylor with the police department. So there's two parts to that. You have the officers that when they see a violation, they approach the people and address it. And then you have animal control, which Riley Jacobs is our animal control officer, and she can answer that as well. Normally we don't have a whole lot, and when we do, we cite the people. But most of the time they're in compliance as soon as we educate them and they get them back on track, and they're in compliance with leash laws or whatever the problem may be. So does that answer your question?
Yes, and then have you guys experienced any super hostile people?
Police department, as far as officers know,
Hello, I'm Riley, Officer, Animal Control Officer for Jackson Beach PD. So once we started reopening the beaches, it was more around the winter time. And in the winter time, you're allowed to have the dogs on the beach 24/7, and that's usually not tourist people, it's usually local people, so they're really good about following the rules, paying attention. There's a little bit of people here and there that'll push back. Most of the time we don't have an issue. It's usually the summertime when it gets very busy. You have locals, you have non-locals, you have people from out of state, and that's when we get the pushback, and that's when we get people hostile and rude with us. But as of right now, it's been fine, but that's also because it's winter time, so. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Golding?
I believe everybody got a copy of my comments, and I also wanted to thank Mike for sharing the marked up version. That was something that I felt was really, really important to help us see what had been changed since the last version that we had seen. And, you know, I do have several comments. Mayor, do you want me to go through my comments one by one? Sure. Okay. First and foremost, I know we got some emails today from 2 different organizations that are focused on the pet mill industry and trying to eradicate that business model. And both of those organizations expressed concern about the animal shelter definition that we have that includes a person who rescues, shelters, or provides a foster home facility because of the potential for that to be abused, and apparently it has been abused in other locations in other cities or states that have pet retail sale bans. And so there was some language recommended for animal shelter that I actually have seen in other cities. It was provided by the Best Friends representative. I would like to recommend that we consider amending our ordinance, the definition for animal shelter to, do you want me to read this as follows?
Are you making a motion to amend?
I would like to make a motion to amend.
Then go ahead and read it as a motion.
I move that we would amend the animal shelter definition to read means a municipal or related public animal shelter or duly incorporated nonprofit organization lawfully authorized to conduct business in the state of Florida that is devoted to the rescue, care, and adoption of stray, abandoned, and surrendered animals, and which does not breed animals or obtains animals from a breeder or broker for payment or compensation.
There's a motion to amend on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion just on the motion regarding shelters?
Can you repeat it? That was just long enough to have in text. Thank you.
And can I clarify that the main points of this definition is basically saying that an animal shelter does not breed animals, nor does it obtain animals from a breeder or a broker for payment or compensation. That's really, really important. And it also leaves out the person who rescues because of the fact that there have been breeders or puppy mill breeders who have established themselves as a rescue and said they're a rescue, but then they are still a puppy mill breeder selling animals to a pet store. So animal shelter means a municipal or related public animal shelter or duly incorporated nonprofit organization lawfully authorized to conduct business in the state of Florida that is devoted to the rescue, care, and adoption of stray, abandoned, and surrendered animals, and which does not breed animals or obtain animals from a breeder or broker for payment or compensation.
There's a motion and a second, and there's still rights from the prior time. If you have a question on this amendment?
Yeah, for the city attorney, does this legally, is there an impact? Is this something that you need to look at prior to us voting on this?
Yes, sir, I would want to research this and look at that and confer with our police department and our animal control officer in order to provide my recommendation or suggestion with respect to it. But, yes, sir.
Ms. Dumont, what's your comment on this amendment? Okay, you can comment on this amendment.
Yeah, the concern I have with the amendment, I second it. Overall, I like it. Can you please repeat, does it have to be an individual or a nonprofit? Because when we were discussing this in the briefing, the reason why they went with this looser, more encompassing definition was for organizations that do become 501c3s, but they're not one yet, and so they're not allowed, they're kind of stuck with the animals. If I recall, that was why this wasn't addressed. Can you repeat this exact type of organization and individuals, so I can see if it would encompass an organization that's not a 501c3 yet, but it's trying to become one, or it may become one in the future?
My understanding from the briefing was that the concern was that organizations like Mayport Cats and Pit Sisters needed to be able to adopt out animals and this not impact them. But both of those organizations are animal rescue organizations, and they do fit into our animal rescue organization definition.
Even before they were nonprofits? Because they're official nonprofits now, but at one point they weren't, and they were still doing this. And that was what we're trying to include, were organizations that weren't formal nonprofits.
I'm not sure that we want organizations that are not formal nonprofits to be selling animals, or, they do need to be an official nonprofit in order to be able to adopt animals out.
I remove my second.
Okay, so the amended motion that was seconded is no longer seconded, I guess, is that the way that goes? So the original motion is on the floor. Ms. Dumont, you were next on the queue for the original motion.
The reason why I pulled back the second on that motion is I really think the city attorney needs to see this, and I think more importantly, I haven't had a chance to read all of it because we got it this afternoon, and I need to have materials at least 48 hours prior to a meeting to be able to vote in the most educated way possible. So I am making a motion that we suspend it, what was the phrase you want to use?
Postpone.
That we postpone this until 2 weeks.
Mr. City Attorney?
Madam Mayor, the clerk's office is making copies for all council members of Ms. Golding's sheet that she provided the city manager. The city manager mailed out to council, but right now the clerk's making copies of everything for city council members, so you can at least review it tonight. But that was just moments before Ms. Dumont made that statement, but we are providing it to council tonight if that helps anyone.
Yeah, we got it by email, but I need time to sit down, write it, read it, and think about it. I don't vote on anything that I get the information for. It's right in front of my seat and I'll vote. So there's a motion on the table.
There's a motion to postpone definitely for 2 weeks. Is there a second? Second. There's a second by Ms. Golding.
Ms. Sherman, is 2 weeks sufficient time for you to review this stuff before we decide on 2 weeks?
Well, here, Mr. Stokes, here's one concern is that it would be helpful to get some direction from council once you see the forms in front of you to give us an idea of what exactly do you want us to do with this new material? Because it's sort of going back to the drawing table again. And I just need to, it would help myself and the officers to know, are we just researching all the items on those pages, or are we revising the ordinance again to be presented as a first reading? So we need some guidance as to what your expectations and needs are, so that when we come back to you either in a briefing or a meeting, we've done everything we could possibly do in light of the new information that was just provided to you this week. because I don't know how far to take this. If it involves researching each of the blue colored items, which you'll see on the form, on the papers, if it just involves researching it and coming back to council to provide you with the research that the officers and I have done to help educate you from our perspective of what we found with respect to the blue colored items, or do you want us to take the next step and begin to revise and redraft the ordinance again in light of the blue colored materials? Because it's thank you. It's a substantial amount of information for us to do either way, either to research or look at, to discuss and conference about. And then there'd be a second level to that, which is working it into the draft ordinance for your consideration. So we'll need some guidance, because I'll share with you that at this stage, I haven't had an opportunity either to speak to our officers about any of this material, but I know that there are many topics on there that the officers have already spoken to and informed the council about at briefing. So I don't want to speak for the officers at this stage, but they may very well have a meeting with me and say, Chris, we've already told you, we already discussed and shared with the council our opinion on these particular topics. So we're going to have to I need some guidance from my clients, and then so I can help the officers help us.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Sure.
If we voted on approving it tonight on the first reading, is this a substantial change where we have to go back to another first reading, or can we make the amendments can we make the adjustments in the second reading?
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Michaels, it would require a first reading again, a substantial amount, yeah. It's changing the ordinance so that not only in these particular sections that are in blue highlighted as suggested language, but it necessarily is linked to other phrases or directions or regulations throughout the rest of the ordinance. So we need to cross-reference any other cites to it, or any ways that that particular term or definition or regulation is implicated in any other way in the ordinance. It's not just a cut and paste, fill the gap situation. It's, does this make sense with the other 6 related areas throughout the ordinance? Just for example, the other 2 or 3 related areas. So it's a reconsideration of the entire ordinance. So it'll never work between a first and a second reading. So I'm sorry, Mayor. So certainly, if these are to be considered, these would never be able to be fit in between a first and second reading.
I'd like to amend my motion to postpone definitely to the 15th of March. It gives us a chance for a briefing to discuss this and hammer it out again for the last time, I hope, before it comes to us for a first reading on the 15th, so it'd be ready for a briefing on the 8th.
Is there a second to the amendment, amending the amendment? There is a second. Discussion on amending the amendment to March 15th, which we have to vote on. I can't tell whose lights are on for what. Is there any discussion on this amendment to move to March 15th? Are you saying yes? Okay. Roll call on changing the amendment to be March 15th. I think I'm doing that. Okay, nobody's looking back. Go ahead.
Councilor Golding? Yes. Councilor Jansen?
Yes.
Meza?
Yes.
Nichols?
No.
Stokes?
There's still some discussion, is that related, or?
We're just changing the date.
Right. I was just asking the manager if he understands, but he does understand. So the first reading is moved to the March 15th meeting.
If the amendment passes.
Okay.
Did you finish the roll call? Sorry.
Stokes?
Yes.
Jamont?
Yes.
Mayor Hobson?
Yes. So the amendment is to postpone, definitely now amended to be postponed to March 15th. So discussion on postponing indefinitely. I want to ask Councilor Golding, of all the blue on here, I think we've spent considerable amount of time on this and a lot of staff time on this. Is the animal shelter item your sticking point? Are the rest of, is everything a sticking point, or is the animal shelter item? Where are you on all this?
So the animal shelter item, which is related to the pet retail sales, is my biggest issue, because my concern is that it's weakening our ordinance. There are a few other things that, I mean, some of it is just cleanup stuff that I have in here that I feel, and you know, looking at, if we're looking at what Neptune Beach has done, you know, incorporating some of the things that Neptune Beach has done. Some of these things were discussed in the briefing, but my understanding was that they were open for consideration, and so I was surprised that some of these things were not included. So perhaps we need some additional discussion then.
There's a lot here, and a lot of time and effort has been put in by a lot of people, yourself included, and I think at some point we need to trust the staff's judgment as the ones who are going to be implementing this ordinance. And it seems like it's the will of the council to go ahead and postpone this, but I think we need to bring this to a close so that we have a viable piece of legislation on the books at some point, which we can all agree we don't really have right now. Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. I have this in the motion, in my discussion, it was to be discussed at the briefing on the 8th, the first vote on the 15th. And the reason why I'm really doing that is not that we have been undecided on definition, it's because we didn't get the information until today. That is the reason why I'm asking for the postponement, but the 2 weeks wasn't going to be enough. So I'm hoping that with the 2 meetings from now, staff will have enough time, we'll have enough time, we'll discuss it, and then we'll be put to bed by the end of March.
Ms. Golding?
My only comment is that, you know, there has been a lot of work put into this. It's a really, really large chapter. I feel we're really close, and so I have no doubt that we can resolve this in March. But I feel that I would like to, I'm glad that we will have some additional discussion. So thank you.
Mr. Mesa?
I just want to make a comment. I just hope that we could resolve this sooner than later. I know the weather's going to change and people are going to go to the beach. So my take on this is to hopefully have it resolved before we get an unlimited amount of crowds on beaches. Thank you.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. So, for the March 8th briefing on this topic, is the topic of discussion the items that are just in this document with the blueprint? Or do the officers and I need to do something more than that? More than research these and come to council with our input on these items in blue?
Well, what I heard from Ms. Golding was that the shelter definition is top priority, but so is everything else pretty much. So I would say, and Ms. Golding, do you have anything to add there?
I would appreciate at least you looking at the information that's in here. I feel like a lot of it is not too significant, since some of it is I just pulled from Neptune Beach Ordinance, and because of discussion that we had in the briefing, that was the reason why I went ahead and went to the Neptune Beach Ordinance. So I would hope that it wouldn't be too time-consuming.
Well, our concern for Sergeant Taylor and Officer Riley is that we come to the briefing with all the information that council needs from us. Because it's a little, we just want to be sure that we're not pulling up the draft of the ordinance again and walking through the ordinance. If council wants that, then we'll do that. But if it's just these items, then we'll focus, the officers and I will focus on those items. We'll be prepared to speak about those items to council at briefing, but we're not, exactly, Mr. Manager, we're not reopening the entire ordinance. Is that correct, Mayor? Is that how you see that?
That's how I see it, and what I would say is if we can have the materials, to Ms. Dumont's point, 2 days in advance of the briefing so that we can review it and come prepared to the briefing and spend 10 minutes on this item, right?
Right.
Can we
Well,
do that?
Ms. Mayor, we wouldn't have any other materials to provide you with at this point. Do you mean our research materials?
Well, the revised proposal, based on whether you're going to include any of these recommendations or not.
Oh, right,
I would
yes,
assume
okay.
that we would be talking about at that point.
Understood.
Okay, we're still on the amendment to postpone definitely. Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure we're all clear. So for the briefing on the March 8th, we will have the information that was provided by Ms. Golden. We will also have, I believe, the supplemental definition of animal shelter that was provided by the external group that was received by you all today. And the staff will have a recommendation of whether it should be included with modification, or not included for each of those particular items for the March 8th briefing. And then obviously from a policy perspective, you can all tell us which direction we want to go on each of those items.
Does that sound fair, council members? Ms. Golding?
I would certainly appreciate some explanation, if possible, if some things are deemed to not be included. Would just appreciate, some explanation about why.
Certainly. And my concern is the other 4 or 5 pages of recommended changes. How would you like us to address those?
I only have 3 pages.
Sorry, so the second page, so there's the first page of the animal shelter definition, and then page 2 after that, page 3, where you see tethering in the middle of the page.
I don't think all the pages are here. I think that's the problem.
I only have 3.
We only got the audience in front of the...
Sure.
The good news is each of you should have received an email today from the city manager that has the full detailed list that was provided by Ms. Goldberg. So if you only have an incomplete list tonight, don't worry. When you go back and check your email, you will have the completed list. We will provide it again with the briefing memo that goes out for the 8th, along with any supplemental information provided by the attorney and staff with our recommendation as whether we think it should be put in with modification, and if not, why we don't think it should be included.
And these are, so that when you see it in your email, like manager said, there's 4.5 pages here. So ultimately, we will need to know, so that we're not doing you a disservice and showing up at the briefing having not fully addressed all 4.5 pages. Do you want us to be addressing all 4.5 pages, or just this animal shelter definition? Because it will show up on March 8th and only have been prepared for 5% of the discussion.
I would think that you would at least be able to address each one of these.
Okay.
So we don't need a dissertation on all of them, but just
Okay.
be able to address each one. I thought some of them were addressed to varying levels in the last briefing, so.
Well, I hope I'm not out of order to speak.
Ms. Golding, go ahead.
I would like to say that I want us to get this ordinance right, and I didn't put things on here frivolously. These were things that I felt were important, and so I would appreciate your consideration.
Balanced with the fact that we have expertise on our staff and the people that are going to be enforcing this ordinance, that we need to consider their feedback. And if we've already discussed something in a past briefing, I think it needs to be noted at that briefing. Nobody insisted that we look further into something or change something. So there's a lot of us up here, and we need to move forward on this collectively, hand in hand with our staff. So give it one more shot.
Sure, yeah. Well, I just wanted to be sure I'm coming back to you guys at briefing with everything you want. That's the goal. So yes ma'am, you got it.
All right. So the motion on the table is to postpone definitely to the March 15th, 2021 meeting. Is there any discussion on the postponement motion? Seeing no more discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Nichols,
No.
Stokes,
Yes.
Demont,
Yes.
Goldie,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes. Seeing no more business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.